All right, if you are moving to Bellingham, Washington, and you're just starting to poke around at houses, it's helpful pretty early on to get a sense of what price range is going to be best for you. So we're going to look at, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this house here in Bellingham, Washington, which is listed at $615,000. And I'm going to look at 3 different scenarios just to try and help you get a concrete sense of what the numbers might look like for you. I'm going to look at one scenario where you're able to bring about 5% down into the house, one scenario where you're able to bring about 10% down. And for both of those, I'm going to assume that you are a first-time home buyer and that you're just trying to bring kind of a minimum down payment to be able to get into a house. And then the third scenario I'm going to look at is maybe you own a home right now and you're looking to move. You're going to sell that and move. Maybe you have some cash to bring. So we're going to look at 25% down in that scenario. And so if you want, you can scroll. There's a scroll bar down below with chapters. You can pick the scenario that's closest to you and skip to that, but each of these will hopefully be helpful. We'll take a look at the house first, and each of these will hopefully be helpful so you can learn a little bit from. But if you want to go ahead and skip to your scenario that fits you best, go ahead and do that. My name is Landon Buto. I am a mortgage advisor based in Bothell, Washington. I work with Cleveland Street Mortgage, and we do loans in Washington and Idaho. We'd love to have you reach out. Let's go ahead and look at this house. So this is in Bellingham, Washington, and it is listed at $615,000. It was built in 1930, 3 beds, 2 baths, but you can see it's had some serious updates recently. It's a really cool spot. I like it a lot. Just a cool layout, cool design, modern but not overly modern, some cool exposed wood. So the house is 1436 square feet and just cool property. Let's see how much property it's on. Single family built in 1930, 4-acre lot, and then the house itself is 1400 square feet. So really cool spot, and seems like a great price. So let's look at the 3 scenarios that I'm talking about here. All right, so let's look first at this 5% down scenario, and in this one I'm assuming you're a first-time home buyer, which can sometimes have a little bit of an impact on your pricing. Sometimes it gets you access to a little bit better pricing, and when I say pricing, that's not just your interest rate, but sometimes it is including your interest rate. It's mortgage insurance costs and other costs involved in getting the loan. Sometimes being first-time home buyer can get you access to a little bit better pricing. With all 3 of these, I'm assuming you have a credit score of 740. That's what I'm using to run the pricing. If you're in that ballpark, it's not going to be drastically different. And so let's walk through this monthly payment. We're going to talk about what the monthly payment is, which you can see pretty quickly. We're going to talk about what the cash involved is, where that's going, and then I'm going to talk about what income it would take to qualify for this scenario, what income it would take to get a loan on this scenario. So obviously 5% down is going to be the highest monthly payment. You have a monthly payment of $4,556. And the breakdown of that is these 4 components right here. Let's start with these 2 because they're very simple. Homeowners insurance and taxes. Those are just dependent on the house. They're not dependent on the loan. So you'll actually see those are the same in all 3 scenarios. I'm assuming homeowners insurance of $150 a month. Taxes, generally you can grab those from the county website. This county, it's a little bit harder to access. So I'm using a number slightly higher than what was listed on Zillow just to be safe, because the number listed on Zillow was pretty low. So I'm using a number a little bit higher, which is $4,000 a year. Breaks down to $333 a month. And then mortgage insurance is the other key component, which is $136 per month in this scenario. And mortgage insurance is a fee you have to pay if you put less than 20% down. Sometimes people will tell you don't get mortgage insurance. Never buy a house if you have to get mortgage insurance on it. Never buy a house for less than 20% down because of mortgage insurance. And I've mentioned it before in other videos. I just think that's pretty goofy, because if you compare that to the alternative, if the alternative is renting at $2,000 a month for another 5 or 10 years before you can get to 20% down, that seems like a pretty goofy alternative to refuse to pay $136 a month because you're never going to get it back, so that you can keep paying another $2,000 a month depending on where your rent is. Okay, take that or leave it. And then last section is principal and interest, which is $39.36, and that is using an interest rate of 7.125%, which is a pretty reasonable rate to expect right now for this scenario, for this buyer profile. This is a 5% down scenario, and so what that's going to mean is all-in cash of $40,000. That's the 5% down plus these closing costs right here of $8,229. So your all-in cash, the cash you're going to have to bring to the deal for closing, is $40,089. And that's a rough estimate. There are some things we'd have to fine tune, but that includes closing costs and your down payment. So the income that it would take to qualify for this house is $9,112, right? Because so roughly you're going to have to be making $9,112 per month. Because generally the way qualifying works is the lender will let you get a loan that breaks down to a monthly payment where your total monthly debts are no more than 50% of your gross monthly income. So your total monthly debts divided by your gross monthly income has to be less than 50%. And sometimes there are exceptions to that where you can get a little bit above 50% with your back-end debts when you include other debts. But for the most part, with conventional, specifically, when you add together your new housing payment, which is this, with any other monthly debts you have, your credit card debt, your student loan debt, whatever, car loan, when you add that together and divide by your gross monthly income, that's your income before taxes in the eyes of the lender. So if you are making, if you have a salary job and that is X amount, and then you have a job on the side and you're making a little bit, but you just started that recently, generally there are types of income that you can count on that the lender will not count as qualifying income. So this number has to be, for this scenario, you'd have to be making about $9,112 per month, and that's qualifying income. So let's go ahead and look at the 10% down scenario. So we're moving on here to the 10% down scenario. And again, I'm assuming you are a first-time home buyer. And we are seeing a monthly payment of $43.09. So that comes down a little bit from $45.56. It's still pretty high in this 10% down scenario. The breakdown is these are still the same. $150 a month for homeowners insurance, $333 a month for taxes, and mortgage insurance is going to be about $97 a month. Again, mortgage insurance is a fee you have to pay if you put less than 20% down. And you can see it's less in this scenario than it was over here, because once you get up to 10% versus 5% down, you're a lower risk of default. So the cost of covering your risk is lower. And then the principal and interest every month is going to be $37.29. So this is the 10% down scenario. Again, we have an interest rate of 7.125%, and the other costs involved in closing the deal, that is $8,299 for estimated cash to close, which with the down payment, that added to the down payment comes to a total cash to close, all the cash you're going to need to bring for this deal, for this scenario, of $70,909. So the qualifying income, if we follow the rule, which we just talked about, and if you skip to this section, the rule is in order to qualify for a loan, for a conventional loan like this, your total monthly debts divided by your gross monthly income needs to be needs to be less than 50%. So that's your total monthly debts, including any other debts you have, plus this new housing payment. And that number divided by your gross monthly income needs to be less than 50%. So assuming you have no other debts, then your qualifying income here is going to be $8,618 per month. Okay, so that's what you need to be making per month, and that is qualifying income in the eyes of the lender. All right, last scenario is a 25% down scenario here, and this time you are not a first-time home buyer. I am assuming you are not a first-time home buyer, which means that first-time home buyer, these two had access to a specific program that lowers, that sometimes gets you better pricing. I don't think it had a real impact here because you made it to 25% down. You're not paying mortgage insurance. So it didn't have a huge impact. The key here with these two programs, the key benefit was it lowered your mortgage insurance, as opposed to if you had been in this same scenario but you were not a first-time home buyer, you might not have had access to that program that lowered mortgage insurance. Here you're not paying mortgage insurance, so it doesn't really matter that much. As you can see, the rate is still the same, 7.125%. We are looking at 25% down in this scenario, and the breakdown of your monthly payment. Your monthly payment is $35.91, and the breakdown is $150 a month in homeowners insurance, and that's a broad estimate. It could vary, obviously. All of this is a little bit rough right now, but it's getting dialed in. And then taxes of $333 a month. That's about $4,000 annually. And then the last component is principal and interest, which is $3108. And we are looking, as far as the cash you have to bring to the deal, you have a total estimated cash to close of $164,868. So that's all the cash you're going to need all in for this scenario, and that's including the other closing costs here covered in included in the process of getting a loan, other fees you have to pay in order to get the loan, and other closing costs also include not just fees you have to pay to get the loan, but sometimes there's things like the prepaids, which are included in your other closing costs, which I'm not going to get into explaining here, but they're basically costs that are part of your normal monthly payment, that because you don't pay that normal monthly payment for the first month of being in the house, typically they're paid ahead of time. So the qualifying income for this scenario, and again, if you missed it, the rule that lenders use for a conventional loan to see if you can qualify for the loan is that your total monthly debts divided by your gross monthly income needs to be less than 50%. And this number here is including the new monthly payment of $35.91 plus any other debts you have, any other credit card debts, student loan debts. You take all of those debts, divide them by your gross monthly income, and that number needs to be less than 50%, which means assuming you have no other debts, and this changes if you have other debts, but assuming you have no other debts, then the income it would take to qualify for this scenario is about $7,182 per month. Okay. So that, again, is qualifying income. It's your gross monthly income, your income before taxes, but it's your income in the eyes of the lender, which sometimes, depending on what your pay structure is, what your job type is, maybe you can count on some income that the lender won't necessarily qualify. So usually if this is salaried, if you've had the job for a while, it's pretty straightforward. But if you have, if you're self-employed and have multiple gigs going on, if you're heavily commissioned, then that varies a little bit in terms of how the lenders figure out what your income is in order to qualify you. So I hope that's helpful just to get a sense of, okay, you're looking at houses, start to dial in your numbers a little bit. If you want to get a real quote on a house you're looking at, please do feel free to reach out. Again, my name is Landon, and I work with Cleveland Street Mortgage in Bothell, Washington. I work closely with my dad, who's been doing this for 30 years. He is just the expert of experts, and I work closely with him and benefit a ton from his advice. So if you want to work with our team, there's a video in the description here that you can click the link and see what it's like to work with our team, so what our process is like. If that looks like something you want to be a part of, feel free to reach out. There is contact info on our website, which is also linked in the description. You can schedule a call, you can email, you can text, you can just call when you're ready, whatever works best for you. We do loans in Washington and Idaho, and we work hard to serve our clients as advisors. A lot of times if you call a lender and just get on the phone and say, hey, I need this loan, they'll say great and just plug you in as long as you qualify for whatever loan works best for them or is easiest or whatever. We work hard to make sure we're set up with the loan that serves you best and ask important questions to make sure, because there are a lot of different decisions that go into it. So that's what we work hard to do, how we try to serve our clients. If you're interested in that, please do reach out.